Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm talking today about the upcoming month of March. And I will be talking about a couple important shifts. Um, that includes the lunar nodes changing signs. They're going to be moving over here into the Aries Libra axis. Mars is going to be moving into Capricorn, Mars and Venus, actually. And the sun is going to be moving through Aquarius, getting closer to Jupiter, etc. Of course, we have a lot of big things happening right now in the sky. But I also wanted to let people know, and I just dropped a link here in the comments, that you can go to this link um, that um, is a free web class that I'm doing that is on this nodes changing signs. Rahu moving into Aries, K2 moving into Libra. It's a free web class that you can get, and I'll be doing it. Um, it's being released on the 3rd of March, coming up here. You know, the nodes are changing in the middle of March. So go ahead and register for that. It's free. It'll be, about an hour and 15 minutes or so. And it'll be a great overview of not just how Rahu and Ketu move into this axis, but what it will mean for you, for each of the 12 signs, including yours. So if you're a Leo, it's going to be activating Rahu in your 9th house, Ketu in your 3rd house. So it'll be very informative for everyone because these transits, obviously are very personal to us. We are, we experience these things in our own life. And so that's what you want to avail yourself of. So if we start here, let me move this forward. It's been a busy day here, just getting caught up with this. 1,000 things going on. First of all, we are on. We just had yesterday. This big event with Russia moving into the Ukraine, and just to say, I had predicted that it wouldn't happen like that, and I was wrong. I got it wrong. I was, trying to be hopeful that maybe this wouldn't happen. I was looking at the charts of Russia and not the Ukraine, but also looking at the transits and thinking, sort of hoping that it wouldn't happen like that. But you get it wrong, and also when I'm doing these things, I like to put out good energy, frankly. But I'll do a deeper dive into it. And these kinds of predictions take enormous concentration. When I do get together, the charts of the countries, both countries, and the leaders and whatnot, becomes more precise. And frankly, sometimes it's hard to do those things because I don't like to put out, I try not to put out a lot of gloom and doom stuff, especially just in these sort of general updates. And I was hoping, I said, because it's very obvious that I could have been wrong with all this combustion, and especially with the Mars Venus conjunction, and with Mars about to go into Capricorn where he's exalted, and the node's about to change, that there are some very dangerous times ahead. So I'm sorry that didn't work out personally. Not just that I'm sorry I got the prediction wrong, but I just that obviously it's a very sad time to be having this. Very sad for the people of the Ukraine to have their lives disrupted this way. I'm not. I wish I would have not just gotten the prediction right. I was also just trying to put out, maybe trying to will it into existence. Of course, knowing that all those troops were on the border, it's easy to say, oh yeah, they're going to come in and start blowing things up. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but not so much today because, again, it's a whole other thing. But I'm going to be talking about the month of March in general and how these shifts are going to happen in your life, more so than any sort of literal prediction about the anything like the wars or anything like that. But I'll refer to some of that. So right now, as we see at the beginning of March, we have this Mars, Venus, and Mercury conjunction here in Capricorn. Mainly, we start with this Mars, Venus. They're going to be dancing together here quite close for quite a while. As you can see, this is March 1st. I don't think it was into like the 12th or something that they stayed really close together. It was until I did it before. How many degrees was it? It's 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, it's like around the 12th. I got it right. So again, I'm looking at how Mars and Venus are literally within 1 degree of each other for a major part of the month of March. So again, this shows that combustion going on here. And the combustion is literally the combustible quality that we see right now in the world. And this is a very volatile, like what just happened in the Ukraine with the Russia, with Russian troops there. Very volatile, explosive potential here, nuclear power. Putin is even threatening nuclear weapons. He's occupied. He's, almost menacingly moved troops into Chernobyl, which is almost like just a kind of threat, to say, don't mess with me or I might, release the nuclear, trapped material, or I don't know. It's just very menacing here. But we see this combustible quality here that's going on with Venus and Mars very close together. And again, not only are there these volatile combustible energies in the world, but of course in your life as well, and not just what we see there in the Ukraine or in Europe, but in many world situations, we see this this sort of explosive potential happening. So again, that also includes things in your personal life and whatnot. But again, the sign of Capricorn is also about concentrating that energy, bringing that effort and energy into something that's more manageable, where you're in control of it and it's not, controlling you, and where it's not something that, where things are as menacing as we see, like in that situation in the Ukraine. There are situations in your life where you have the power and you'll need to exercise that power and that mastery over the moment and over your immediate environment. For all of the uncertainty in the external world, most of us at least are still blessed to wake up and have stability, and we still have to do our practices and breathe, and all of that is still your life. If that's pretty much everyone's life who is watching this, that hasn't changed. And from that place of concentrated effort, discipline, gratitude, something divine is possible, because this exalted Mars is also with Saturn. It's also with Venus. And by the way, we may also see that once Mars becomes exalted in Capricorn, again, especially as we get into March further and further, we may very well see an exalted response to what has happened in Ukraine. Even in that example, even in that instance, for example, we may see some real, like uprisings in Russia against these actions, because I have to feel like the majority of the Russian people do not want to see their military and their army and their leaders, leader, uh, invading another country. This could get really, really terrible. Um, the Ukrainians aren't going to just lay down. It's these people that are displaced, these people that are going to fight back, the guerrilla warfare, the carnage that lies ahead is going to be ugly. And this is the reason why most people felt like he's not going to do this. Um, and why most felt like it was a good strategy, for example, for Biden and others to come out and just call it out and say, do you want to do this? Do you want to bring this kind of catastrophe into the world? Is it really worth it? And so I had felt like it probably wasn't going to do that. It was probably to make concessions. And then also saying, because Mars in Capricorn is much more strategic, it's much more stable. And so perhaps what that means in the aftermath of what happened is that we will see a more stabilizing result even in that situation, where perhaps very strong, internal pressure will slow things down. But again, we see all this Capricorn energy and Saturn, Mars. Again, when Mars is exalted, particularly when it's with Saturn, because as we go later in the month, you're going to see it's going to get very close to Saturn, right near its exaltation point. Saturn's influence on Mars, again, calms down and shows the consequences of these actions, and, the consequences of war. I mean, that's a huge, you can even just take those two things, war, which is Mars, and consequences, which are Capricorn, and show that this is why Mars is exalted in Capricorn, because there are consequences to war. War is messy, unforeseen consequences. So this is why we learn to be careful in the art of war. And it's not surprising that this thing started on the, like at this time when Mars and Venus are still in Sagittarius, where things are all fired up about the thing. Okay, we're fired up about it in Sagittarius, where we're all fired up about our principles, but then we have to deal with the consequences of it in Capricorn. That's what Saturn is. Saturn is the consequences of the things that get us all fired up. And we see this Mars and Venus move by the end of February, they move into Capricorn. So even the Ukraine situation notwithstanding, even just in general, things that are where we're sitting right now here on February 24th. Is that the date? Yeah. February 24th, where things are exploded and, again, people fired up around their principles or whatnot. We start seeing the consequences of that, financial consequences. Again, there's these sanctions that are coming, but also just practical, real world consequences of, let's say, big uprisings in their country, the backlash against the people, or the people protests, and even there were high level. I think there was a report of high level Russian officials who have come out literally against Putin. Which, I mean, this is very dangerous. It's a dictatorship, and Putin has a way of making his enemies disappear. So, but again, he also, if there's massive uprisings, there's a point where you can lose the military, or where you lose the police and you lose backing, and so it's a very dangerous game being played, not just against Ukraine, but Putin is playing a dangerous game as well. So ultimately, these are, aside from that, and again, we can look at that situation as a kind of metaphor, but also as the kind of knife edge of possibilities, that there's a lot of dangerous games being played, and consequences determine where things go from here. And a lot of the consequences are determined. Money is the big one as well. How much money is the Russian oligarchs, or even the Europeans, or whoever, willing to lose? we live in a very corrupt world now. Relative to that situation, it's also not good for Europeans because of their reliance on gas, Russian gas, and all. It's a very complicated thing. That's why I'm not going to talk about it in as much depth here. But I'm using it as a metaphor even for your life. So look at it as well in your life, where the practical, tangible resources, like in your world, are also being being reflected back to you now. And so this these are the qualities of Capricorn. Capricorn is about consequences and about um, the result of our actions. So the transit through here, and by the way, the last time Mars went through Capricorn is when we had COVID. So this is similar to that transit. It's like a recurrence transit. 1 second. When we started the lockdowns. In, I'll go back and do it here. Let me go back here. If we go back, like, this is 2 years ago. So if we go, a week ahead. So the last time we had this transit, now it was end of March 2020. So this is the end of March 2020, and this is right when we were major in lockdown and all that stuff. That's the last time Mars went through Capricorn. And so, here we are now as we go through March. As we go through March, and Mars is, back again. It's that same need to be disciplined, to be courageous, to be strong. And these are the important things. The first important transit in March is Mars going through Capricorn, also with Venus. And as you see, they start to separate in the middle of the month. By the end of the month, they're separating, but they're still pretty close. They're still within a few degrees, which is still very close for Venus and Mars. So they'll still be very close through March. And this is difficult in many ways, even for romantic relationships or some of your agreements. Might not be the best time to try to, talk about difficult situations you have with people where you're fired up or upset at them about different things. And so, again, sometimes it's best not to do things. And again, March might not be the best time to get in there and try to work on relationships with people where you're still frustrated and angry at them and feeling disrespected or whatever it might be. Because again, the reason is because you're still fired up about it. You're not happy about it, and sometimes it's good to know when not to really go there, So I would say throughout March, it's not the time to call up the long lost relatives and try to work it out. You're not going to really feel like it. You're going to feel like defending yourself. You're going to feel frustrated, especially for all the times that you did try to compromise and make nice. You're going to be frustrated if you don't get that apology that you think you deserve, or they're not owning up to it, or whatever. So that's going to play out for pretty much all the way through March. And in the meantime, the real benefit there is to realize, what's the point anyway? What good does it do if you do get that apology, or does it really matter? I mean, maybe it does, but does it really change that ultimately you still want to be their friend? Or again, many times we keep going back to people for something that they're never going to give us. They're never going to give you that, apology that you think you deserve. Or even if they do, they don't really mean it so much. They're living their life and they're pretty happy with what they've done. And if it bothered you, well, you got then, so what? I mean, sort of. So if it's that kind of thing where, especially if you've seen it over and over again, you've had this thing with people, and you try to keep some connection, but it still leads back to the same thing over and over again. This is really a good time again to just resolve within yourself, not to like break it off or cut it off or be angry. We always, we do things in anger. We break something off out of anger. We can't just sit with things and be like, why do I care about this person, you know, being sorry or owning up to something or doing this or that? Like, we're trying to get something from somebody else. And that's what frankly pisses us off, right? So instead, this time now, from now, like the end of February, through like March, February and through March, introspect about that. And again, ask yourself, is this really a battle worth fighting? Why am I fighting this? Why am I going to this person wanting something from them? What does that say about me? Who am I really, why do I care? Okay, so they, maybe I'd like to be their friend and I still care about them, and it's sad that I can't be involved with them, which is true. And it's sad that we have to, not be friends with people that we might like because they have personality traits or things that we just can't abide. And that's sad, but we have to kind of like move on, right? Or at least internally move on, or not get angry about them because they haven't forgiven us or whatever. And I certainly know this very well also. And it's sad because you wish the person could see it and that there could be respect so that you could have the connection. But this is the thing. We can't have both often. We can't have the trust and the connection with someone who will violate it and not feel sorry later, and who won't understand that you can't just act that way. So it puts us in a difficult position, but we have to, this exalted Mars, what it really does, especially with Venus, is it can give us very healthy boundaries, particularly internally, where we can internally make a clean break and not be so dependent on other people's, respect or whatever it might be. So, by the way, just I see there are people here, their whole thing, they're obsessing about me talking about the war and is life worth living and what's the point. I that's not how I am. That's not what I'm going to say. I'm just going to keep going with what I'm doing. Okay. So you can keep saying that stuff in the comments and I see it, but I'm just not going to, that's not going to be the only thing. All right. So anyway, so again, this big shift of these planets through Capricorn, particularly Mars and Venus, this is a lot of what we can be working on here. And it's difficult. This is how Mars and Venus are, why they're in conflict, because Venus wants to be respected, but wants connection. We want to have the connection, but we want to be respected as well. And Mars is like, if you don't respect me, then I'm going to break it off. And where it gets difficult is I'm going to be pissed off at you about it and fight with you about it. Now, again, that's the part where it gets to be too much. Some people can't have a break without being aggressive, for example. There's some people where, like, every time you have to, like, have a little break, they have to, like, punch you in the mouth before they take a break. Or they have to, every situation is harsh. Like, it always has to be harsh. And that gets to be difficult. It gets to be difficult to trust people who always have to, like, break things off or do things in a harsh way, for example. And again, so all of this kind of stuff is where you where we get into conflict, because everybody's way of dealing with Mars isn't the same. Everybody's way of dealing with Venus isn't the same. So we're all different. So again, the reason this is a big opportunity this month is because Saturn is also there. Mars is exalted. And, Venus isn't really getting Venus is kind of getting the worst of it for the most part, because Venus is the one who maybe wants to connect. So if I'm giving, quote, advice at this point, it's that kind of thing where the Venus part of you isn't going to be so happy with the respect that you're trying to get. Mars is there. irritable about not being appreciated and irritated about it. And Saturn is there also just being kind of like, don't even try, don't reach out, don't, and kind of sort of withdrawn. So that part is not going to be so excited. Wait till later to maybe try to, Venus will be exalted up here in a while. So that would be a better time to maybe try to reconnect about things. And then Venus winds up going through some good signs here later as well. So put that off. Yeah. Again, the other big shift, and you just see up here, Rahu moves. Rahu is moving on the 16th, I believe, is the exact day. Let me just go back. And okay, so yeah, on the 16th, Rahu goes into Aries, right? Rahu goes into Aries on the 16th. Rahu in Aries, Ketu in Libra. And so again, that's a huge shift that's going to be happening. And this will be a big shift for like a year and a half. And that's going to be changing our life during that time. I'm going to put this link in there again. Oops, and put this here. So again, I'm doing a class. You can get this for free here. Free web class. Go there and sign up. I have a screenshot here where you could find out what this means also for your sign. I meant to have this better together for this presentation, but it's been very busy, so I just got this together. And so you want to really know what this shift into Aries and Libra means for you. So for example, if you're a Pisces person, then Rahu is going to move into your second house and Ketu into your eighth house. That's very different than if you're a Cancer, where Rahu moves into your 10th house and Ketu moves into your fourth house. So in this free web class that I just talked about, I'm going to talk about these shifts here, not just for each of the 12 signs, but also historically. So you'll understand, like, for example, the last time Rahu went into Aries and Ketu went into Libra, and other things. And of course, what it's going to mean also for world events and things like that. I already talked about this in my 2020 forecast. Talked about this in my 2020 forecast, where I mentioned how, especially later in the year when Rahu moves into Aries and Mars joins Rahu in Aries this summer, that's when we could have some real dangerous times. By the way, I said this earlier as well when I was talking about the potential for war and danger. I really was looking more toward this time later in the year, particularly when Mars moves from here over to here. And I thought we could avoid some of it now. But later in the year, when Rahu Mars gets up here, that's going to be difficult. So I'm going to talk about that as well in that free web class. So again, go ahead and sign up for that. It's free. And I do this because it'll be more than an hour. It'll be long. And, I would rather have people, focused and ready for that. So this shift here is going to bring a great sort of movement away from the Taurus end, especially because Rahu is where the nodal axis is the most expressed. So when Rahu went into Taurus, for example, in September of 2020, it was right before the US election, I said that one of the big things that was going to happen is we were going to really double down on wanting more stability and wanting things to be more stable, more, less kind of chaotic, which they had been. But I also said some of the things that would get conjured up around that. And like, for example, the last time we had Rahu go through Taurus is when we had like the origin of the Department of Homeland Security, for example. That also happened when Rahu went through Taurus. And I said this is one of the dangers of the wanting more stability is we can give away a lot of our freedoms in order to get stability, and that would be a big theme of the next year and a half. Look how that played out. Look at the biggest, maybe one of the biggest controversies of the last year and a half has been what? The lockdowns and mandates and things that the government does to make us safe. Make us safe. How much has that been a big issue the last year? Well, it's maybe in some ways been the biggest issue. All of those protests, for example, in Canada, the big issue was we don't need you to mandate vaccines to make us safe. All the mandates is literally very similar to what happened the last time Rahu went through Taurus in the aftermath of 9/11 in the US. And we had all of the, again, we had an entire bureaucracy created, the Department of Homeland Security, to keep us safe. Well, look at how many things have been done since September of 2020 to keep us safe. By the way, I also use that as one of the biggest reasons why I thought Biden would get elected in 2020, because the nodes would move into Taurus by the time of the election. And one of the biggest things is they were going to look at who was more stable, Trump or Biden. And again, that was one of the biggest issues is, whether people liked him or not, Trump was just walking chaos, and people, and again, look at what happened shortly thereafter. Even he was taken off Twitter and all of this. And so regardless of what people think of the two as presidents or, whatever, at least, and this is just at least because it's not commenting on anything else, but at least every day in America is not what is the president tweeting about and what is the latest chaos, which is literally what it was during Trump's presidency. What's the latest person he's attacking, or what's the latest thing he's doing to get attention, right? And so again, all of that stability was shown as a motivator when Rahu went into Taurus, but now it's going into Aries. So again, those of you who are triggered because I said something political that you don't like, try to raise your game a little bit, okay? It's just an observation, all right? Just got to say it. But so now it's moving from Rahu in Taurus to Rahu in Aries. So now it's a different energy. Aries is about, again, this is why it's dangerous, particularly when Mars is also going to join Rahu in Aries. Now it's like, again, because Aries is about sudden, shocking, it's not shocking to, sudden, unexpected, I should say. Not necessarily shocking, but it's unexpected, impulsive actions and things that, where we're, willful and, let's say, egoistic and all about me and being first and my identity as being the most powerful thing. So Rahu, so now that axis is what's going to be driving things. That's on the driving end of the sort of nodal stew, right? And within that we also have what's called Kala Sarpa Yoga, and so there's a whole lot of other things going on. All the planets are in between the nodes. By the way, that happens a lot. So sometimes people make a big deal about it. We get those things quite a bit. But so again, I'm going to talk about this in greater detail on that web class that you should definitely avail yourself of. And particularly how this impulsive nature is going to affect you. Like if you're a Sagittarius, this impulsive Rahu end of the node, this impulsive Rahu is your 5th house, right? If you're Libra, it's this impulse of the 7th house, right? If you're Virgo, it's 8th house. So you should know this difference. This is going to be huge. And as Audra said, every time nodes change, it's chaotic, micro and macro, indeed. Whether we know it or not, again, look at how much of our life has been driven the last year and a half based on this whole idea of what's making me feel stable. And by the way, it has been more stable financially, more, and regardless of what people say, right? Economies and whatnot. And again, we can say, oh, everything is more chaotic than it's ever been. It's actually not. It was much more chaotic in the 2020. People forget because they're just living here, and they're just always sort of triggered, but things have gotten a lot more stable. That includes things even like jobs and numbers and other things, and money and other kinds of things we can look at it statistically, even if you as an individual haven't, but there are other things that have gotten more pressured, and especially around these things I just mentioned, like the pressure of like mandates and the things that we're paranoid and worried about. Again, these Rahu and Taurus things, like, I don't need you to make me stable by taking away my rights and mandating I get a jab and all of that stuff. Those kinds of things also have been these pressures. Some of them are legit, some of them are paranoid, because again, this is the nature of Rahu as well. So many of the people that I see, particularly online, and I'm not talking about people that are literally living under this kind of oppression, like day to day. I mean, there are some people who literally their lives are being affected by that day to day, but so many just get online and just spread just because they don't like it, and really nothing in their life is even being affected by it. It's like nobody's forcing them to do anything. They're not even really, like, they don't live in a state where there's mandates. They don't live in a profession where there's a mandate. They're not a trucker. They're not a this. They're not a that. Nobody's making them do anything. It's just this whole kind of thing around it. It's just, that's the thing. And again, this is part of the Rahu culture that we live in now. The distortion field gets created. We have the distortion field around issues now, particularly online, because the internet is a very Rahu thing as well. So this is also something to look at. So with Rahu moving into Aries, we're going to have that kind of distortion field. And again, there's a lot of positive qualities of that. It could be like, hopefully there's a measure of healthy individuality where we stop literally being sheeple and stop literally, and I don't mean using the word sheeple as a sheeple, because so many of the people that I say using the word sheeple are themselves proving that they're sheeple by repeating sheeple. Here I am. I'm not a sheeple, as I repeat the same buzzword that every other person repeats that I've heard, where I say mainstream media because I've been programmed by one part of mainstream media to call everything else mainstream media. So now I'm going to prove what a sheeple, brainwashed mainstream media person I am by saying that I'm not the brainwashed mainstream media sheeple person. Again, so maybe we'll actually wake up from all of this brainwashing and trance that's been induced in the Aries and with the Rahu and Aries part, because the Rahu and Aries is the part that would be embarrassed to put their arm around a politician and go, this is the politician I like, or this is the mainstream media trance that I like. This is the crowd this is the flag I'm waving. And we'll actually be individuals who will actually think for themselves. That's the power of Rahu and Aries, to be embarrassed by all of the sheeple mentality. But it can also get very fired up about about not seeing that, about thinking, oh no, these are my original thoughts. Really, I thought of that myself. Really, I'm not just out there fighting for team whatever, because that's typical. That's the way it is now. Is this team right or left, and buying into the trance, and maybe they'll see beyond the trance and beyond what I call it now, it's the fascist corporate oligarchy, which is really what it is. There's a fascist quality, and it's the corporate oligarchy that owns everything. And not just in the US, but by the way, all this stuff in Ukraine as well. It's all about money. And I don't just mean defense contractors. I mean the calculus between natural gas going into Europe and not, and this and that. It's all a chess game on this very high level. And whether it's Putin and Russia or the US and the CIA and this, they're all playing games in everybody's country. The Ukrainian revolution in 2014 was part Putin trying to control whatever his name was, and then the EU trying to get this one out, and the CIA in there, and they're all, it's all this game where it's oligarchical money, Russian oligarchs, but US oligarchs, corporate fascist money. All of that is what controls the media and gets us calling each other sheeple and all this stuff. And if you're not looking at that, that's the game that's being played. If you actually think that it's, oh no, it's AOC and Trump and Bernie and this one, and you really think that's the actual thing that's going on, then you're playing the game. The game is being played at a much higher level. And so maybe Rahu and Aries will wake up all of that in people, where they will actually be powerful individuals, not a cog in the machine of the corporate fascist oligarchy. In the US, it's probably the worst place. I don't know. I don't live everywhere, but we don't have anything over here. All of our money goes to the defense industry and all this corporate fascism that buys all the politicians, all the media, all of it. We can't even get health care. We can't even spend a dime on health care because how are you going to pay for it? But we can throw billions at the defense contractors. So this is why it's easy to be cynical about these wars, because of all the people making so much money off of them. So again, these kinds of things, the power of what Rahu and Aries might be is for everybody to just wake up from these trances they're in and stop acting like, oh, these mandates, oh, now I hate everybody who is a sheeple, who wants to, oh, that COVID and this, it's all just, oh, and have everybody fighting about things that are health precautions, or, yeah, the little crackdowns are too much here and there, but calling each other these names, this ridiculous tribalism, while guess what happened in the era of COVID? While we were fighting about mandates and sheeple and fascism, that was fascism, the real corporate oligarchical fascists were cashing in. And you weren't watching. We had a chance here in the US to pass even like ridiculously modest legislation for healthcare, other things that could help people. Oh, no, we couldn't do it. A week later, we passed $700 billion in a defense budget. Nobody batted an eye. We don't have money for something 5 times less. Anyway, this is the thing that's going on. So maybe this Rahu and Aries, this is one of the biggest things that maybe individuals will actually wake up and be individuals. By the way, sheep, Aries is a sheep, right? It's a ram, which is a sheep. It's a ram with horns. So let's not be sheeple and be actual rams, right? With the head down. So, but we could see the sheeple all go to war with each other over who's the bigger sheeple. So this is a long term with Rahu in Aries, but so as we continue more with March here, one of the other big shifts that's going to happen, besides all of the Capricorn energy, is, as you see, the sun will continue to move through. Well, first of all, the sun gets quite close to, actually by the middle of March here, the sun gets really close to Jupiter. Now, this Jupiter combustion is very powerful for illuminating truth and wisdom, purifying the false types of wisdom. And again, so maybe there's a lot of, I think it's quite possible that, at least as far as a sense of justice and social justice in politics, in what's happening now in Ukraine, for example, and in other parts of the world, we can see through this and see through the rhetoric and see through the the attempts at brainwashing the masses into believing these things, because I think as a tragedy would unfold in the Ukraine, for example, if this occupation, if it turns into a long occupation and a lot of the devastation and destruction and body bags, people are not going to have a stomach for this, the Russian people. And the Sun Jupiter could make it pretty tough to maintain that sense of, oh no, this is the cause we're fighting for. Come on. And again, I honestly think this is Putin's biggest problem here, is keeping the Russians on board for, like, yeah, let's slaughter these people in Ukraine. Like, I think that's going to be the biggest obstacle. And I think that's why many thought he's not going to do this. It's going to be very hard to keep the world, or at least the Russian people, aligned with that. Some will, because of some of the propaganda, but we'll see how it goes. But I'm saying that this kind of pressure and this kind of illumination with Sun Jupiter being very close, I would expect that as we get into March, and through, as you see here, March 9th, Sun Jupiter here, it's still pretty close. But really, even in early March, I mean, it's already pretty combust, but we have this Sun Jupiter in Aquarius fired up around these ideals, but I think it's going to be harder to maintain them. And then, as we see, Mercury also goes into Aquarius. So we're having this shift into this Aquarius energy as well for about half the month, right? We see Sun, Jupiter, Mercury in Aquarius. So these are the two signs where pretty much where all the planets are, right? And that's significant to have so many planets in Saturn's sign. Again, so this shows this relationship to consequences, to both internal emotional consequences and external cultural, the implications of our actions globally and on the global stage, and whatnot. So these are going to be big themes in March, for sure, is really checking in with our collective relationship with each other. And again, you as an individual, these are also obviously big issues. Your community, your place in the world, what you want to stand for, what you stand for, the type of world that you support and want to support is going to be very big. Again, the Sun is going through Aquarius. It's there now, but also, again, it's very close to Jupiter. But Mercury is also, going to be there, which is the planet of intelligence, discrimination, communication. So again, we might see all kinds of things if this Ukraine situation plays out, for example, where, through social media and all these other places, we start to see just a lot of these atrocities and things that are just hard to keep afloat now in this day and age. One of the benefits of all the social media and whatnot is we are all connected. And liberal societies, liberal democracies, it's very hard, even though we fall very short, it's very hard for any leader, whether you're a dictator or not, to put on the facade that you're a cold, heartless monster. It's not a very popular place, and there are too many cameras now. So it's very hard to be Joseph Stalin now. There are too many cameras around. You can't have gulags and beating up protesters and mass graves anymore. It's simply, there are too many eyeballs watching what you're doing. So that's one of the problems that dictators have these days. And so the last thing I want to talk about is from the middle of the month to the end. Again, we also have to see this, as I already said, the end of the month from the 16th on, Rahu goes into Aries. So from the middle of the month of March through the end, that's when we have the shift from Rahu into Aries, but also the Sun goes into Pisces. So the end of the month, there could be definitely a lot of that more mystical connection you know, relationship sort of transcendent and a real a real retreat, maybe not escapism from the world, so to speak, but an awareness of things that are bigger than just all of these problems of the world. Not necessarily in a bypassing way, but ultimately we're a cosmic being, and we want liberation. We're here beyond all of the problems of the world, um, and we can do what we can do. But most of the time, we are, day to day. Most of us are waking up in a place where there's not war and things like that, and we have almost exclusive and infinite capacity over the moment. You probably woke up in a place today where things like Ukraine and all that was mainly in your mind and on your computer. It wasn't in your immediate environment. And again, we can get all emotionally worked up about this, and this is the excuse and the reason why we're all disturbed and we don't practice, we don't do anything, we don't live our life um, in the present moment and as a spiritual being. So the middle of the month, we're going to have that, have that graceful opportunity as well. It'll feel more, more present in us to really connect with that higher cosmic potential. And this, this will be important as well, for sure. And when the sun goes into Pisces, it's very much a time for that higher mystical potential, also higher creativity, and the awareness that that you're not of this world, that you're not just this person. And hopefully not doing that bypassing where you're just kind of bypassing the responsibility for your own salvation, so to speak. So those are the biggest highlights there, that I would say. And I'll just go back again and put this here. I definitely would recommend people register for this web class. Again, these are really difficult times, especially with some of the events of the last day. I really hope, I'll just say, about the events in Ukraine, that maybe and hopefully when Mars goes into Capricorn, these cooler heads prevail. We also have on March 1st, February 28th, March 1st, is Mahashivaratri, where the this is really symbolized by Lord Shiva and that calm and still presence, that where the mind is still, the mind is peaceful, rather than being triggered and out of control. And hopefully there are consequences for these actions, and somehow the situation can be diffused and there's not too much harm that comes to the people of the Ukraine. But besides that, in your life, all this Saturn energy is really very much about making peace with the nature of the world and being of service and supporting those who need support as much as you can, but also being responsible for yourself and reclaiming your time and your own your own responsibility for the life that you're living. Because again, like I say, every person watching this, pretty much all of them, you're waking up in a place that's not a war zone, that's not Your life is not in danger. You're not fighting for your life. And that's a great blessing. It's the greatest blessing in the world, is to not be in that position. So you have every opportunity today and pretty much for the foreseeable future, probably, to wake up, do your spiritual practices, your meditation, connect with the self, connect with the source, and know the self. Know thyself. And one thing for sure is all of these planets, this exalted Mars with Saturn and Capricorn, even with Venus there, which is quite devotional. And then particularly when the sun goes into Pisces, enormous amount of mystical, metaphysical promise this month as well. So say a prayer for all of those who are unfortunately in harm's way. By the way, not just in the Ukraine, all over the world. There are people suffering in Middle Eastern countries, African countries, people without enough food. We should always remember, and maybe I don't do my best to remember that either. And when something pops up like this, then I remember. My Guru Amma always remembers these things and always says a prayer for anyone who doesn't have enough to eat, or anyone who is suffering, or whatever it is. So we should always be doing that. And starting with myself, I'll say I should always be doing that as well. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. And if you enjoyed this, please also, share it with others. I appreciate it. And again, you can get the free web class on the nodes as well. It'll really help you to know about these upcoming shifts. So you take care, and we'll see you soon.